Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm nervous. I'm nervous to talk about this because this is something that has affected me really deeply. And although I'm happy to have like an answer, the curing phase of it is really difficult, and that's what I'm going through. And I just feel compelled to open up about this because I feel like there are other people who are also going through this, and it took me 6 years to figure out what's going on with me, and my body has been caused a lot of harm in this process of having such a long time just to find out what's going on. And if I can help somebody get their diagnosis just a little bit faster than me, even if it's 2 years in, 1 year in, a couple years in, even if it's just a couple months in, if you can figure out the root cause of what's going on with you faster than I could, then I feel like I am doing something good, because this has been one of the most difficult things that I have ever had to go through, and I just don't want anyone else to have to suffer the way that I did. Oh my God, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. This has been 6 of like the roughest years for me ever. My whole life, my entire life has completely changed as a result of this. I'm just gonna come out and say exactly what I have. I have black mold poisoning, mycotoxin illness, and Lyme disease. So maybe those things don't sound super intense, but to be honest, they affect more people than you would think, and they cause a lot of harm to the body. Like, they actually deteriorate your body, and it's really scary, the effects and the other diseases that they can cause as a result of it, because it gets in there and it messes up everything in your body, and you cannot control your body, and that's why it's so scary. I feel like I'm alone in this because I don't have anybody around me who's dealing with this, but actually it's affecting around 100 million people in the United States. And I think there was a study that over half of the buildings in the United States have mold in them. Over half of the buildings. Like, that is so scary, especially knowing like how detrimental this is to your health. I know all of this now, but I did not know for 6 years. Like, even 6 months ago, I didn't know any of this, and I have been on the fight of my life to try and figure out what's going on with me. So first, I'm gonna just tell you why mold is so bad for you, and then I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my story of like how I have now gotten to this point in time. So like, our bodies are based with like this ancient bacteria that evolved to become the mitochondria in our cells, and mold is like the biggest enemy to bacteria, so therefore it makes it really toxic to us. When you're exposed to it and it gets inside of you, like the mold gets inside of you, you breathe it in or it gets absorbed through your skin. And where does mold like to grow? Like, if you've had mold in your house, maybe it's in like a dark, small space that's probably wet, and you know, it's like, where's a dark, small, wet space? Inside of our bodies. So it goes into your sinus cavity, engrades itself in your brain, it goes into your lungs, and then it's inside your organs, like in your body. It goes onto your skin and it gets absorbed directly into your bloodstream, and then it has nowhere else to go. So then it just keeps duplicating and duplicating and duplicating, and then it's growing within your body. So like, when it grows and takes over your house, it just keeps feeding off of itself. Well, that's exactly what it's doing in your body. And you're feeding yourself, like you're feeding your body thinking that you're doing all these good things, but actually you're just feeding this mold to continue to keep growing. If you don't even know that you have it, you don't even know what's going on. It's causing all of these neurodegenerative issues within your body. And the scariest part about it is that it affects your brain and your heart the most, because mycotoxins target mitochondria, and your heart and your brain is made up the most out of mitochondria. So this is directly attacking like 2 of your main biggest organs, your brain and your heart. Like, it's insane. I think the scariest part about mold is that it is a system infection throughout all of your tissues in your body, and everything works together. So once it starts growing through your tissues, there's no end to it. And I think the number one thing that scared me the most when I found this out is that it causes damage to your DNA. Like, it directly affects your DNA. Like, that is so scary. And as a result of that, it causes cancer. Mold's been classified as a type 1 carcinogen, which means it definitely causes cancer. And my body has had this sitting in it for the last 6 years. Oh my God, I'm not gonna cry. So it's growing inside you. Like, for me, for 6 years, it's been growing. Other people, I've heard stories, they had it in them for 15 years, 20 years. Like, it's so scary because it affects your DNA and causes cancer. It breaks down myelin, I think it's called myelin, which leads to multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's. And it directly damages your brain, leading to Alzheimer's and dementia. And a big part of one of the symptoms is brain fog, and it's like a precursor to telling your body that like you're going to be getting Alzheimer's. And the brain fog that I've experienced over the last 6 years, I can't even begin to explain to you like how stressful it is when you know what you're talking about, but you sound like an idiot because you have the worst brain fog of your life. So yeah, it causes these brain toxicities. It also causes immune dysfunction, cardiovascular toxicity, toxicity to the GI tract, neurotransmitter dysfunction, micronutrients deficiency, metabolism dysfunction, gut dysbiosis. Like, it just causes a plethora of issues. It gets in your body and just continues to grow, legit taking over your body. And the way that my doctor described it to me, she was all like, you are being brainwashed. That's what's going on. This toxic poison is brainwashing your whole body, and you don't have control of your body. And so it makes complete sense when I get into like what I've been going through. I have not had control over my body. I haven't been able to do anything. I can't control my brain. I can't control my gut. I can't control anything. I legit feel like it's not myself at all. I look in the mirror and I don't even recognize myself, and that is the scariest feeling in the world because you do not have control. On top of it being just insanely terrible for you, it can trigger an endless list of other issues, right? So I'm also dealing with Lyme disease as well as HPA axis dysfunction. And your HPA axis is like 3 things. The way that I think of it is it's like a stool. So there's your, oh my God, the brain fog right now. Okay, so there's your hormones, there's your adrenals, and there's your thyroid, okay? And those 3 make up your HPA axis. Well, if one of them gets knocked down, then the stool is like off. HPA axis is off. All 3 of mine are knocked down as a result of this mold. So my hormones are completely out of balance. I have extreme adrenal fatigue, and we're not entirely sure if there's hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, or Hashimoto's that's going on with my thyroid, but that is also being affected. And Lyme disease. So my doctor thinks that I contracted Lyme disease after the fact because the symptoms from that started slightly after my mold symptoms, but the mold could have also just triggered the Lyme within me. And I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think that Lyme disease is curable. So that also is something that is very nerve-wracking for me. On top of that, mold can trigger heavy metal toxicity, leaky gut, parasites, and chronic fatigue syndrome, which are other things that I'm also dealing with. And there is a plethora of other issues that it can trigger as well. On top of this, it completely annihilates and destroys your system. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story of how I've come about to this point in time. I'll try and make it as quick as possible, and then I'm going to read you through all the symptoms that I had to find out this diagnosis. And then I will also read you a list of symptoms that I didn't have but are also symptoms of mold. That's also something that's really difficult about treating mold and figuring out that you're even dealing with mold, because there are so many symptoms and you might get 2 of the symptoms, but maybe someone you know has 2 other symptoms, or maybe someone who's been exposed to it doesn't get any symptoms and they're not even being affected by it. Like, it affects everybody different. We all have like completely different DNA, so you don't even know, like, it might not affect anyone else, and maybe it just affects my journey up until this point in time. 6 years ago, I was living in New York City, and I got affected by Hurricane Sandy. And I was living on the East River, and the entire lower half of New York City, like, lost power, flooded out, and it was really terrible. And I never thought that I would experience a natural disaster living in New York City, but this was one of the scariest things I've ever been through. And so the first floor of my building flooded, and there was sitting water in there for a long time, and we didn't have power for a few weeks, and basically the moisture and everything went up through the air ducts, and I lived on the 4th floor. So I started experiencing pretty severely chronic fatigue, depression, and anxiety at this point in time. But I also had just gone through some emotional trauma. I went through 3 terrible things simultaneously. It just was like the perfect storm. It just threw me over the edge. So I thought that I was just dealing with some emotional trauma. So I went to the doctor, and they were like, you've been through some serious things, like you're just depressed, right? So they started putting me on antidepressants, and I started going to therapy and all of these things, and it never got rid of it, okay? It actually got worse because my body is so sensitive, and I had never been on prescription medication before. So they kept upping my doses. I had every side effect under the bus from the medication, and it wasn't going away. The depression was getting worse, the anxiety was getting worse, the fatigue was getting worse. Like, the fatigue was like the worst thing ever. And I didn't know what to do. I moved out of that apartment. I didn't even know like the mold factor was even a factor at that point, 6 years ago. So I moved out of that apartment like 4 months later, not because of the mold, but just because I had to move. And then this is where the real, like the mold actually became a more bigger issue. I moved into another apartment in Midtown East, and there had been a leak. I didn't know this, like obviously when I moved in, but there had been a leak for like 20 years in the bathroom. And actually while I was living there, the ceiling fell through in our bathroom, and our landlord would not fix it. So for over 6 months, we had this open hole in our ceiling with this constant moisture dripping down. And we became so upset about it, we stopped paying rent. And I actually did my own mold test. I bought like a test, sent it into this place, but I didn't know that mold would cause the type of health issues that it has caused me. If I would have known then what I know now, like, I would have done so many things differently. But think of it also this way. I'm showering in there every day, just breathing in these mold spores, like nonstop, absorbing them directly into my body because I'm showering in this bathroom. And I proved that there was this mold, but he still never fixed the problem. We called 311. We had people come in. They still never did anything. This is so typical New York City for you. This was when my, oh my God, the brain fog, I can't even deal with it. This is when my symptoms, like just the anxiety, the depression, and the fatigue were at the absolute worst. And at that point in time, I just was like, I'm severely depressed. And like, I started getting, social anxiety where I never even wanted to go out. I'm 26 years old at this point. I broke up with my boyfriend because I couldn't even like function normally. And the fatigue and the depression was so bad. And I also I didn't know what was going on. I just thought that I was dealing with depression. And so I was just in a deep hole of like where I couldn't get out of bed. I would drink a bottle of wine every single night to like make myself feel some type of way because I just had nothing. I was just this gray blob walking around, and I was just eating absolutely horrible food, and I was flailing. I was struggling so hard, and my doctors just kept upping the doses and upping the doses and upping the doses of all these antidepressants, and I was dying. Like I was hanging on by a thread. I completely retracted myself from all my friends. I had the worst social anxiety ever. I was never that type of person. I always was like outgoing, curvy, dancing, doing whatever, like just having a great time. Like I never cared what people thought about me. I always would be doing like the most obnoxious stuff ever because I'm just like this goofy, fun person. And I had lost all of that. I had completely been stripped of my personality. I was just this like outer casing, and I just felt like this constant gray blob. And so I finally moved out of that apartment. Prior to moving out, I had enough. I couldn't take the symptoms that I was feeling anymore because all the antidepressants and everything that they put me on never got rid of my issues. It gave me more issues. It heightened issues that I had. I never had insomnia until I started taking these antidepressants, and then I had the worst insomnia for 5 years straight. Like it just was so terrible for me, like everything. So I decided to get off the antidepressants, and I switched up my diet because I was gaining all this weight. I felt terrible about myself. I decided that like I just like said, like I'm not going to be depressed anymore. It's not exactly how it works, but I just like could not take it anymore. I did not feel like myself, and I didn't know what was going on, and I could not control my mind. I could not control myself. I don't recommend completing like stopping your stuff cold turkey. Do it with the guidance of a doctor, but I had just had enough, and my doctor was not listening to me. I was going to a psychiatrist, and he just was not listening, and I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. So I moved out of that apartment. I lived there for almost a year. And it was when I was at this next apartment where I started, the biggest symptom that I have for the Lyme disease was facial paralysis. And so you can kind of still see now how like this side of my face is like slightly has a droop. I'll never forget it. My friend came to visit me who I've known my whole life. I had known her for 20 years. And she was like, what's going on with your face? It's much better now than it was. I just feel like I see it like mostly in my lip. I'm very self-conscious of it because I did not have this my whole life, but it caused like a facial paralysis on this side of my face, and it's never gone away since then. I'm very, very self-conscious of it, especially when I'm talking to new people, because I feel like they're just looking at like my face droop, and it's very embarrassing. It's very embarrassing for me. And I try to pretend like it doesn't hurt, like affect me, but it does. It affects me a lot. So at this point in time is when my doctor and I think that that's when I contracted Lyme. I was an active person, so I had been going hiking and all these things, but you can get Lyme from mosquito bites and not even from ticks. You can get it from so many other things other than having a tick bite. So I don't know where I got it from, okay? And even though I had left like the source of the mold, my symptoms just never went away, and it started getting to be where like anything I was consuming was affecting me. I had to stop drinking. I couldn't drink alcohol because when I went out and drank alcohol, my body would be like annihilated for like 4 or 5 days trying to like recover from the alcohol. I completely I started I wanted to get better, and I was like researching things on my own, and I still had no idea about anything about mold at this point in time. And I researched, and I was like, okay, if you're, consuming certain things, they can cause gut issues. So I'm thinking, and then I started learning about how like your gut is linked to your brain and all of these things. I'm going to the doctors. They're telling me nothing is wrong with me, that I just have anxiety and depression. And I was like, no, something is wrong. I'm not okay. And I had stopped feeling any kind of emotions. I wasn't happy. I couldn't even feel like good, happy emotions. I never felt joy or anything. I just felt like I was in the shell of a body and that I was not even there anymore. I was completely stripped of myself. And so I started researching for my diet, and I gave up dairy. I stopped eating dairy because dairy was causing me severe anxiety anytime that I consumed dairy. And there are all these links, for it or whatever, and the antibiotics and the hormones and all this stuff. So I stopped eating dairy, and then I stopped eating meat because of all the antibiotics and the hormones and all these things in the meat, and those can cause issues in the body. And I stopped, I was hardly drinking at all. I, would have maybe like a glass of wine like 2 times a month or something. And these things are still not going away. And here I am, and I don't know what's going on. And I'm just thinking that like, I'm not happy in my life anymore. And I was like, okay, so, maybe leaving New York is the answer at this point in time. So I decided at that point that I was going to move back to Chicago. My whole life I had wanted to live in New York City and be a designer in the fashion industry. I was working as a designer at Ralph Lauren, and here I am, and I'm so miserable and unhappy and so depressed and so fatigued that I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I can't even be here. Like, I need to be closer to my family. So I left New York City. I left my dream to move back to Chicago. And I thought that moving back to Chicago meant that like I was gonna fill that void that I had inside of like missing my family, because I grew up with a very large family and I'm really, really close with them. But I thought that all of this was just really stemming from a deeper feeling of missing my family. And I came back, and still the symptoms never went away. And I still just felt like I was flailing and that I wasn't myself, and that I was trying to piece things together. And I was like, what the hell? I have moved back. I've done all these things. I'm taking all natural supplements. Like, I'm doing everything right. What is wrong with me? Like, what is wrong with me? And it wasn't until my little sister was buying her house last summer. So this is year 5 of me trying to figure all these things out, not having any freaking clue what's going on. Doctors telling me I'm just depressed, and that's it. And I'm like, I'm not just depressed. Like, it started getting me so angry. I was like, I'm not. I know there's other things going on. I'm dealing with depression, but there's other things going on. And at this point I had only been going to Western doctors. And then I started taking like holistic supplements, just natural supplements, for health purposes, because I just felt like I wanted to be as natural as possible within my body so that it could just function normally. But my sister and I just started talking that like there had to be some underlying thing that was going on, and we kept trying to figure it out, but I had no idea, right? And I didn't really know where to turn. She was in the process of buying a house last summer, and she didn't end up moving into this house because it turned out that there was this severe, huge mold overgrowth. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I heard mold is like really bad. And she was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, wait, do you remember when I lived in that apartment and there was that mold? And it sparked it in my mind. And then I went on a rampage searching. And then all of a sudden I started finding like all of these Instagram people who like treat mold and holistic doctors and stuff. And I was like, freaking out because I was like, I think that I've like found the answer. So I contacted this doctor. Her name is Dr. Jess, and I found her online, and she's in San Diego, and she does like phone and video consultations, and she has successfully treated people with mold and Lyme. And at that point I didn't know for sure if I had it, but the earliest appointment I could get with her was February 7th. And so I was like, okay. And she is a holistic functional doctor, and she did go to school as a Western doctor, but then she didn't believe in what she was doing, and she wanted to treat the root causes of things. So she like switched her own path. And so I went through my entire health history with her. Like I think I had a 2-hour conversation with her, and broke down everything to her, and we were able to link things together. And she did diagnose me with black mold poisoning, mycotoxin illness, and Lyme disease. And I'm going to be doing some further testing to try and figure out the underlying issues that are also going on as a result of this. But she said, she was like, you cannot heal. You cannot heal your body until you get rid of mold. She's like, because the mold will mask everything and you will not be able to get to your other issues. So this is your number one priority. I will go in another video into how I am healing this and what I'm doing to get through it. But because it's just too long, and this video is going to be way too long, but I did want to go through the symptoms that I had and then read through the other symptoms that you also could have, so that if you have any of these symptoms and you've possibly been exposed to mold, you can go and get some help to try and heal yourself and get through this, because I don't want you to go through what I have gone through. I want to help anybody that I can help. So my symptoms, I'm just going to read them because there's just so many. Initially, anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, and insomnia. Very puffy, bloated face, bloated body, severe brain fog, body depersonalization, where you don't feel like you're living your own life and you're not up in your body. Constant urination, even if you don't have a full bladder. Night sweats, brittle nails, hair loss, and thinning. I used to have like the most like thickest, beautiful hair. My hair is like dry, brittle straw now. Like, it's so embarrassing. Severe dry mouth, constant body pain throughout your entire body. Exhaustion and anxiety after eating. It's because my body is so fatigued, and it takes 40% of your energy to digest food. I didn't even have enough energy to be able to digest my food, that it would just cause me severe exhaustion, that I would need to like go to sleep after I ate food. Body being completely annihilated after drinking. Joint pain in your fingers, your toes, your hips, knees. Severe muscle weakness. Mood issues, mood swings, irritable, anger, procrastination, complete personality change. You're exhausted but you can't sleep. A lot of sleeping issues, malaise, anhedonia, lethargic, chest pain, numbing in your hands and your feet, a severe, incredible thirst. Oh my gosh, it was like never freaking ending. And then ear ringing and eye floaters. And those are the symptoms that I have had now at this point. So obviously it started with a few, and then the symptoms continued to grow. Like, it started for me with just anxiety, depression, and chronic fatigue. So those were the first 3. And these other ones all crept up. But this is over 6 years of this continuing to annihilate my body. So it makes sense, you know, that like as time would go on, it's like your body's trying to tell you that like something is going on. But how are you supposed to pinpoint all of these different things together, you know? Other symptoms that you can have is chronic sinus infections, extreme poor memory, which that's kind of like brain fog because I did have bad memory, headaches and migraines, nosebleeds, unexplained bruising, vertigo, Hashimoto's, arthritis and gout, food allergies, Crohn's disease, metallic taste in your mouth, and that's it. I think that there are more, but this is just all that I found when I was like searching to see. And there can be a lot of things. If you've been suffering from anxiety and depression, I would say that there's a good chance that there is some other underlying illness that's going on. It might not be mold, but I had never experienced mental illness, and even when I had gotten through all of my emotional stuff, I still could not beat past this depression and anxiety. And I did not feel like myself. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was going on. I was going to Western doctors. They're telling me that I'm fine. I was not fine. They did not want to listen to me. They just kept saying, you're depressed, you're depressed. Tell a doctor there's something going on in your head. They're going to send you to somebody who deals with, you know, mental stuff, and then they're just going to give you something for the mental stuff. But what is causing the mental stuff? There's something that's causing it. And our gut is our second brain. So whatever is going on in our gut is going on in our brain. And that is why I initially had changed all of my food choices, because I was like, something is going on. But even when I had done all of that, I still couldn't fix the issues in my brain. And here I am now finding out that for 6 years I've been suffering from mold and Lyme. I mean, there are many hidden infections. There are so many hidden infections that you could be also dealing with that could be causing these mental issues for you. So I want you to dig deep for yourself to try and find out what's going on, to help your body and to fight past what you're going through, because I don't want you to go for as long as I have to try and figure this out. I feel compelled to try and help people fight through these types of illnesses that they're going through, because this is like annihilated my life. This has completely just have been a huge road bump in my life, and I don't want anyone else to go as long as I have, not knowing what's going on and trying to figure out and having to think that they have to suffer for those diseases for the rest of their life. You don't. Even when I got on the phone, when I had my consultation with my doctor, I was like, I had come to terms that I was going to have to deal with these for the rest of my life. And she was like, you don't. She's like, we are going to get your life back. We are going to bring you back to who you are. And you are not going to have to fight for life the way that you've had to continue to fight. And I was like, okay. And it was the first time that a doctor listened to me and had my back and was like, we're going to save you. We're going to fix you. And so I will show you everything that I'm doing to try and beat these diseases. This is the toughest thing that I've had to go through, trying to detox and get through this a holistic way. It is not easy. It is so stressful, but let me tell you, it's going to be worth it. And so if you want to come along this journey in me healing my health, and to learn how you can possibly heal yours too, I will just share everything that I'm doing. I'm not a doctor. I'm being treated by doctors, and they are coaching me along this way. I hope that this video helped anybody if they're going through similar issues and you didn't know what was going on and you feel blind to what could possibly going on with you, then I hope that this helped you. And if you're interested in continuing following along this health journey for me and how I am curing myself of this, then stay tuned for some more videos. I'm going to do one walking through all of my symptoms and how I experience them, the supplements that I'm taking, and the process that I'm using to detox, as well as just my daily feelings of this fight to get through this, because let me tell you, it is not easy. And I just want to give a real perspective for what it is like to be going through this and fighting off these diseases. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.